associates with spray paint and attitude, and which leads me into the next part of this conversation, right? Which is the spray can as the new brush, right? And I'm going to show some examples of and talk about this as you guys, as painters, right?
Very quickly, just one thing. Spray paint never touched the canvas.
No. But except until FUTURA started doing it.
Yeah. He's the one that actually broke that window for a lot of people. When we were doing it, it was just straight up. He actually initiated that. And because of that, someone like A1 exploded. Because he lived on that. He lived on painting on the floor, so.
So when I look at and think about painting, right, and this is, Lenny, I sing your praises about this and how you stand singular in many ways in the act of painting, the way you paint and apply paint, and the, and again, if you carefully look at the show, it's painting that's both, aerosol and paintbrush and marker, right? It's all of that. But there is something so distinct in the action of painting and the immediacy of your painting and the iconography of your painting that I always felt stood singular in the canon of painting of our time. And so what we see here is, I love this picture because it just shows you're jumping from one side of the painting to the other or something or the other. I want to know if you could share with us your connection to the can, the spray can, as the tool, the medium, the extension, so to speak.
It is an extension, basically, right? And it's all muscle memory for all of us. How we paint, I guess. We have a process. You have a kind of a background, an outline, a sketch, something to kind of go over and modify and finalize. But for me also, it's just very spontaneous, as I am with most things. I just like to kind of go at it, and spray painting is very free in that way. And, my technique is quite, atmospheric and all that I just picked up over years of working with the can, but I really get busy when I invert the can and I'm able to control it in the fashion in which I do. But, initially I think I was out on an island really by myself, and, people, as much as we talk about break today, I think even in break's moment, not Dondi or Zephyr, who were with me that night, but people were like, yo, what is that? That's not, the initial reaction even to my own work from the group was, yo, that's whack. Like what, they didn't even get it. But like I said, I was already checking out I'm like getting out of school anyway, guys, so I don't really care, about your critique here. But once again, it was just me wanting to make a paint, everyone was trying to do pieces and whole cars and masterpieces. I just wanted to make a painting on a subway car.
And so today, as you paint, we were just saying that you actually touch the surface of the painting, of the canvas.
Yeah, I know. I love what John's saying, and maybe you didn't even realize that. But what he's mentioning is like if you're just traditionally spray painting a wall, a mural, a train, whatever, you're actually never engaging with that wall, and there's like a weird dynamic happening between us, like all of 1 inch to whatever amount of difference. Because you don't touch it. It's all an aerosol propellant hitting the wall and affecting what you're trying to accomplish. But yeah, at the moment when we started, it all starts with like blowing a drip. Remember how we used to blow drips? It's like you try to do something and the shit starts dripping. We're all over there like, so, and then at some point, someone realizes like, nah, fuck it, I like drips. Like, and then it's just, so it all evolves, right? But yeah.
You could see something happening in your painting. What's the title of this painting?
The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I really tried to get this for the show. It's not in the show, the original painting. The triptych skateboard decks that I did are here. But yeah, this is all aerosol. I mean, there's some acrylic bits perhaps. But this is mostly done with aerosol.
Yeah, one of the things you brought up that I thought was really great in describing the work is atmospheric. And I've been looking at his work for many years, but something hit me last time when I was looking at the work about the relationship between space, conscious space, subconscious space, but also in how you're using spray paint in a way that creates these very electric and just very controlled, but very just electric moments in space, but also that there's something quite holographic about it, you know, like there's the dimensionality of painting that I didn't see before, you know, because now, simply because you were now applying actual brush paint on top of spray paint.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
And actually, as an older painting that we were looking at, right, and saying, wait a minute, this is not a new thing. This is something he's already been exploring.
Well, I'm doing a big like revisitation right now of old styles because, you know, I'm quite critical of old work, but there are some bits in there where you're like, wow, okay, you know, am I prophetic in seeing shit?
I'm glad you say that because we were just looking at one of your paintings and he was astonished by it. And 1982, and I was.
Okay, yeah.
And
well, I rave about European paint also, right, guys? I mean, when we discovered European paint, it was like, whoa, next level of painting for us because we had a limited palette, right?
Totally.
We knew 3 to 5 spray brand, you know, spray paint brands. So,
well, to my point on that was, and I said this to him, I said, you know, it's interesting because you find when you get older as an artist, you know, you come back to where you started, right?
Yeah.
And here we have Chris painting in the studio. Okay, this is traditional painting. Now, so now, what I love about what you do is that it's kind of a hybrid. If we could look at this painting here, and what is it that the spray can and the paintbrush give you as they work together?
Well, I mean, in terms of my studio practice, early on, I would always do works that were, say, separate. They were in acrylic paint or in oil paint, and were done with a brush. And then I had those that were done completely in spray paint. And after a while, I started to think that, okay, I want to meld those two things together in a way that creates a kind of dialogue that kind of makes sense, you know? So in this painting, which is called Chamber Street, this was actually kind of a layup. This reminds me of a layup in the Bowery layup, which was really known as a kind of really dirty and dark place to paint. And actually Lee can back me up there because he's painted there quite a bit, I think. But the amazing thing is the station is still that way. It's still pretty dirty and grimy. You know, the MTA has done nothing to change this station. It's still like leaks, drips, rusty material. It's pretty crazy. So I wanted to kind of convey that within the painting, that physicality of the way things are dripping and the way things are chipping away as time goes on, and nothing has really changed. So, I mean, in terms of, you know, as far as the work that I do in public, murals and things like that, I still pretty much keep it to spray paint because that's the medium that makes sense for me. It's fast, it's applicable. You know, if I need to make corrections, I can do it quickly. It really just makes more sense.
And John, one of the things, again, each of these guys have different styles and ways of applying paint to their artwork. John, you seem mostly spray paint from a lot I see, and you've mastered the spray can.
I'm still trying.
You're still trying.
There's, you know.
But what is it that the spray can gives you that a brush doesn't?
It's the immediacy of spray paint. whether it's going to drip or not, whether the paint's going to work or not, whatever it is. And what spray paint also doesn't allow is that you can't mix it. You can take acrylics and mix it and get a color. So you're at the behest of this can and whatever the color is. And sometimes if you shake it, whatever, how long, and it doesn't work, that's what you use. So the immediacy of it, the spontaneity of it, it brings me back to like the thinking of the abstract expressionist, where it was just of the moment. Whatever it is, that's what's going to happen. So many times I worked on canvases and the cans are just dying on me. Like, well, it is what it is, and I leave it.
What kind of response were you getting early on because you're using spray paint? And again, you mentioned the abstract expressionist, right? What kind of feedback were you getting? Like,
well, there were two things. In the beginning, when we started doing stuff in Europe, they were concerned about the environment and if the spray paint was good for the environment. That was there. Here, their concern was, is the paint going to last on canvas? Is it going to be conserved, in such a way that it'll last for 200 years? Listen, I've seen trains, or I should say walls, that are 80 years old with spray paint. Still there? Well, not 80, okay, 70 years. But the tag's still there.
Were they taking you less serious because you were spray painting?
Well, it wasn't serious. It was more like, well, we'll see. At a certain point, they accepted what we were doing, but they wanted to see, well, how long is this going to,
Yeah, I felt that the spray can kind of evoked for some people this sense of immaturity and lawlessness and maybe perhaps a lack of talent to use a brush early on. We proved them wrong, didn't we? Yeah. Breaking out and breaking the rules, how graffiti has influenced galleries and museums to redefine their rules, right? Because I think, for the most part, our generation and artists were not so much concerned with the rules about making work or showing it. It's a matter of who was going to give us the space, and there was very limited space for a very long time. And more importantly, there wasn't enough dialogue between artists and perhaps people who thought critically of painting and art, enough to make those spaces for those conversations like we're having now in Italy with the Italian FUTURA show, right? So now here we are in these precious spaces, and as this one is, and here we have the exhibition, a shot of the exhibition. Lenny, your thought on, again, having a survey in the institution, and this institution spaces are not new to you, so to speak, but in considering how you engage with an institution, what do you feel they get right and they get wrong?
It's all getting, it's all participating and hoping for your moment, and I feel like finally, and I'm very grateful, obviously, to the institution for having my show at this moment, but, I think I'm only here because, once again, prior to the pandemic, we had Jose Parla here. We had Henry Chalfant here. Right.
Gordon Mata Clark had his
Gordon
collection,
Mata.
which is wonderful.
I could just go on and ramble about Gordon, how happy I am for all of this documentation to finally be unearthed and revealed. But it's a big moment, but I also think it's only possible, once again, because there are others within our culture and community who've been knocking on doors and enabling something like this to happen. I mean, even this moment that I feel we're all part of, guys, back talking about Wild Style and mentioning Henry and Martha, who shot The Break Train. 40 years of our cultural story being exported and ultimately embraced by the world. And then subsequent to that, like what the world did with all that knowledge and all the artists that came from all over the planet who've created what we now know as the global street art phenomenon that exists out there, only makes us more, I don't want to say important, but we are certainly, our place in history is a little bit more established. None of us imagined this. I could imagine, I didn't. I didn't think, when John was talking about like the end of the 80s, which we all felt that was a bit of a depression, when, Jean was about to go, Keith was going to be, people were gone. And then in the 90s, we were all kind of left with this vacuum. And, we all went in our own directions. We all kept being creative. I embraced digital and got into making T-shirts. And, that's 1990. And I was like kind of done with the art world, actually, figuring, you guys chewed me up and you spit me out. And we talk about all that investment of the 80s, from the Janices and the Shafrazis. I didn't name anyone in particular. And just to say how they got us for so cheap. And they treated us kind of badly, actually. So I was bitter in the 90s about this whole thing and wasn't psyched about the future of our story. So thank you, young people who went out and painted and crushed it and demanded attention.
I have a question for you guys. Did you feel, again, having that moment in the 80s, and then all of a sudden, these art students, Kenny Scharf and Herring and them, come in and eclipse all of us in a way, but also co-opt us, right? We kind of all become friends and so on. I always held some strong opinions about that, right? Only because I felt they were taking a space that was reserved for you guys, my elder guys, who were leading this forward. Did you guys have any feelings about that?
Well, I think that, okay. No, you got it.
Okay, yeah, honest. Keith kicked a lot of doors down for us. That's my opinion. Wherever he went, and if we were in the vicinity, he would include us. Perfect example, I was selected as one of the 5 artists to represent America when it was 5 artists and 5 French artists. I arrived to Paris, never been there before. I was painting with him in the museum. And the only reason I was able to paint with him was because he put the spot there, right next to him. Otherwise, I could have painted like in the back of the gallery. But he said, no, you got to paint here, and we paint together. So he was very open. I mean, he would invite us to his studio. How many times? We'd go and hang out. If he's doing a club, if he's having a party, we would all get invites to it. Same thing with John Michel. John Michel did the same thing. So that was no, I don't think they took my space. It was theirs. My space is now. Theirs was then. I'm good to go.
Yeah. I also think that Keith, Kenny, Jean-Michel, they were all really supportive of what we did. When their star was rising, they collected our works. They included us in the conversation. If there's a bad guy, I would think it's more the art intelligentsia of that period, because their work was a lot easier to explain in an art historical context, and because of the influences. And our work was like a language that they couldn't speak. So it was easy for them to kind of write us off. 1 week we're on the guest list, the next week we're not on the guest list. And in that respect, I'm really glad that we had some sort of European support to fall back on.
I would agree. It's interesting because when I started making the graffiti sculptures, Keith was the first one to buy one. He came to Henry's studio. We were all at Negril. He's like, "What are you up to?" And I was like, "Yo, I'm making sculptures." And Henry, and he came over. He says, "I want to buy that." So he was also very supportive. But I also think part of it was, and he knew this, we would talk about this, how he was kind of pulled into the whole canon of graffiti, so to speak. And I think that's I felt territorial about that. But again, as we move into the gallery world, right, and this is important, I think, as some insight from them about the business of art, right? John, you've been in this for so long, and it's a very difficult business, wouldn't you agree? And you show a lot, and I think it's probably worth telling people where do you find, one, the endurance and the fortitude to deal with a business, right, that, you know, is very fickle, right? And that keeps you locked in, perhaps, in a certain way for the marketplace. How are you navigating that now as you get older, in terms of your position in it, and perhaps your position in the canon of art history, so to speak?
Well, I think a lot of the Bronx comes out at me when I do an exhibition and I don't get paid. And what I mean by that is that lack of respect goes for anyone. You know, it's not just us, it's just some galleries just work that way, and I don't have the patience, and I go after them. Perfect example, I did a show at a gallery in Soho, and some paintings sold, and one of the paintings sold to a friend of mine, but he didn't want the gallery owner to know that he was buying it. So he gave me the money, I paid the gallery owner, I said, look, just ship the piece here. But he kept insisting, why don't you tell me? I said, because the guy doesn't want you to know who he is. I guess he doesn't want to be bothered. It went back and forth, and he said something really stupid to me. So a week later, I rented a trucker with 2 men. I went to the gallery during my show and pulled everything out in the middle of the show. He looked at me like, what are you doing? He locked the door, pulled out a gun. I said, okay. Well, it turns out that the guys that I hired were friends of mine from my neighborhood. So they knocked on the door and said, we got a problem. I said, what's the problem? Like, you got a gun. So they were going to hit him. I said, no, let it go. Took the paintings and I left. Another instance in Soho, someone owed me money for 3 months. He just refused to pay me. Went on a Sunday night with a cousin driving a van, smashed all his windows. The windows cost more than what he owed me, but he got the idea. But I'm not advocating you do this, but but you know what? What happens is the lack of respect sometimes instigates that. Now, coming full circle today, we are in a position to say yes or no to shows. We could say yes or no. I mean, because to this day, some galleries say, well, you know, I love these paintings from this period. I said, that's nice. I'm not visiting that period. We're doing this. They go, oh, like, no, then we don't do the show. So that's been afforded to us with our 50 years of painting. But, the lack of respect is a problem for me.
And it's interesting because, Lenny, one of the things that is really serving you right now is, representation matters, right? Mm-hmm. You have iconoclasts behind you, Eric Firestone and others. And that, it is so important to protect yourself in this space. And so now that you've learned and been burned and learned, share with us, I guess, where you stand now with that, with the business of art, a business of being you.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, 50-50 is still a tough kind of nut to, like the VIG is very high. So the whole idea, it never struck me as amazing, right? But then again, I'm not trying to subvert the system as I maybe once did, because that's not the smart economic play in the long run. It might work in the short term where you feel like, okay, I can just operate without these guys. It's actually not true, not if you're trying to elevate through the system and move up whatever that chain of command is. But, you know, honestly, like, money, personally for me, it's just not interesting, so I don't focus on it. And as a result, like, yes, I'm grateful. You know, I have a gallerist, I have management. And you know what? Those guys are very qualified to do their job, and I don't have to really worry about things so much.
You also have a secret weapon.
Which is? Wifey?
Wifey.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, she's my collaborator also. It's like beyond love and, you know, like, hey, I want to hug you and, you know, cute shit. But it's like just more or less like a friend that can help me realize, you know, something that maybe that, you know, I wasn't really thinking about. Because I have, it sounds crazy, you know, I mean, trust me, this is remarkable because here we are. It's like kind of my thingy. I got my boys here. We're all here. Never good when I was a kid at public speaking, but just to say that we're all here and it's super amazing, but I couldn't even explain, guys, like how it all really happened. It's a mystery to me as well, like how this whole thing came to be, what moves I made that enabled this, that, and the other thing to occur. It's just been really a lot of good fortune, and I'm not super religious, so I don't want to like thank a God-like figure, but I'm very grateful to my dead family of 40, 50 years ago, and I'm just thankful. You know, they raised me right.
Yes, they did. Amen to that. So the next slide says, the world of art and the art market are not one and the same. How the community of graffiti and street art advocate and activate independently and collaboratively. And that put that there because that's really important. Right? I've always felt the world of artists is exclusive to the world of artists. And they have generalized this art world thing as, you know, that the market is that much closer to who our practice and the world that we exist in. They're a marketplace. But also, we exist in a community space, right? And John, this really focuses on you. Because one of the things that's really interesting about the world that we grew up in was advocating and tutoring and mentoring and collaborating, creating opportunities for one another. And again, I reference Fashion Moda from the jump because that's really important, where John, you start to see where he develops as an artist, but also as a curator and an advocate for artists. And come around, he's still in the South Bronx, and you open up Wallworks. And this was a very, 10 years now?
10 years.
10 years now.
Yeah.
And so, at the service of the community and artists, as you could see here. And please, big them up for that. Thank you. You could have easily stayed on track for a career in the art market and just that. Why did you come back to the community?
You know, it wasn't planned at all. It was just a thought that happened. And I was in Paris having dinner with a dealer who actually runs the Wallworks Gallery in Paris. And I just sat there and I just said, hey, would you be interested in possibly opening a gallery in the Bronx or opening a space with me to showcase local artists? My daughter was with me and she just looked at me and I'm like, what? This was just spur of the moment. And I asked him again, he goes, well, if the situation happens, we could talk about it. Got home, within 2 weeks, I found the location. I called up the place. I said, is it available? He goes, yeah. And another week, we had already registered the name Wallworks New York, and on and on. And then I asked the guy in Paris, hey, I got a space. I just did this. We just got the website. So he flew to New York, saw the space. We had lunch. He goes, I love it. Let's do it. Goes back to Paris. A week later tells me, I'm not interested. I'm like, okay. Now I'm sitting on a 5-year lease. I don't know what to do. So I told my daughter, I told myself, I put $100,000 aside, basically all the money I had to run this. I'm going to lose it, but I need to do this. It comes on the heels of Fashion Moda and what it represented and what it spoke to me and spoke to people locally who had nowhere to go with an identity or something. And you know, because of Fashion Moda, you know, you got A1 and Toxic and these guys, because they walked in like, hey, what's this? So Fashion Moda has huge tentacles, you know, and a lot of people that are here have been affected by Fashion Moda, not knowing it because of what it did in the Bronx. Anyway, so we opened up the space. I called a friend of mine who had just retired from the fashion industry. I said, listen, I got a problem. I told him what it was. He literally ran to the bank and wired me $20,000 to cover the rent for the year. And we went from there.
Tell us what's happening now.
Well, we're celebrating 10 years in January, and we're actually moving our space from Canal Place to the Hunts Point area. Lots of reasons, but I never want to be an island. FUTURA said that before. You never want to be an island. We never want to be by ourselves. So where we are, Bronx Art Space and Casita Maria are there, and it's all walking distance. The Point's there. So it's finally a thing where it's not only running a gallery, but we're going to be running 2 spaces and the theater. So we can have actually live music or plays. So if someone has an idea for a play, you approach us. So let's talk about it. The space is also all nonprofit. So everything now can go through proper channels. It's a dream.
And so at the service of the community, DAZE, this is incredible, this basketball court. I mean, this is huge, right? Tell us about this project and why paint a basketball? What is it serving? What purpose is it serving in the community?
So this is actually a court that Crash and I painted this year in the middle of a heat wave. And for me, it was a part of an organization that I've been working with for quite a long time called Thrive Collective. Mm-hmm. And Thrive Collective, for those that don't know it, is a citywide organization whose mission statement is bringing art back into public schools citywide, where those programs have been, you know, have disappeared basically, and also bringing art back to communities. All of the work that they do is with students, all of it. So I was kind of doing projects like that involving students within my work and doing mural projects with them and various workshops kind of on my own. And then when I met up with Thrive Collective, I realized that we're all kind of on the same page, only they're better organized than I am, but we're pretty much on the same page. And I kind of make it a point to try to work with them at least a couple of times a year. You know, as far as the students' input into a work like the basketball court project, a couple of them were helping us painting in process, but it was really important for us to have the students' input in it and ask them what's important. What do you want to see on this floor piece? So things like their mascot and the words prosper, their championship trophy. These are all things that were really important that they wanted to see representative in the work. So I feel that this work doesn't just belong to myself, Crash and Thrive, but it also belongs to the students. And they can have this kind of sense of pride whenever they look at it.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful, thank you. The next slide, aesthetically pleasing graffiti style as a brand. John, again, you. No, this is wonderful because I remember when I first saw this, I was passing through the airport, and I said, "Yeah," you know, like this is amazing. I don't think they know what they have. And of course, apparently it's sold out.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about the project, but also of the opportunity to apply your work off the canvas and onto product, right? And does that lose anything? Does an edge of your work, or what function does that have outside of gaining some money for you?
Okay, well, that's a lot of things in that question. Toomey approached me about doing this in the middle of us moving our studio. So I had nowhere to paint to do this. So literally, we moved in and I was painting this. Their idea was to do a set of luggage based on a painting. I said, okay. They said, you can only use 8 colors. Okay, wait. So I did the painting, and I got a phone call maybe a month later that they're having issues with the image. I'm like, what's the problem? Because there's over, I think they said 300 colors here. Like, what do you mean? When you use spray paint, it gradates. So when you use like blue into white and you blend it, it creates all these colors. And I'm like, oh. So what do I do? He goes, no, we're going to figure this out. So they figured out a process where they were able to do it. And thanks to the good people in China, because that's where it was fixed. But products always lose something. I mean, the identity is there, but when you're doing something, well, the painting to this is about 6 by 5. So when you're doing it, you know, on that scale, and then they're going to reduce it, you're going to lose something. The identity is there, but you know, it's not the same. But it's from what I gathered when they did this, it was like the fastest selling series that Toomey ever did. So I was like, oh, wow, that's kind of cool.
Well, to my excitement, and this is how I view all these projects you guys do when I see your commercial work, is like, oh, shit, they're getting up big time. Back to the subway graffiti mentality, like, oh, yeah, you're getting up, right? And I think there's something very interesting about that, about how your name and your image travels through product.
Right. Well, the image itself, it's actually a subway train with all the tags on it. So I grew up in the projects. I grew up with a bunch of guys that were older than I that were doing tags. So I used their names and put it in there. So if it's a thank you, then subway train, then, you know, went from there.
And here we have Lenny, who's been killing it. And he's, you know, I think if anybody's done this so tastefully, elegantly, and just a smooth transition, you've been doing this for quite some time, of applying yourself to product, going back to the recon days and so on. You're hitting new highs now, and it's, you know, and I chose these the footwear part of your brand, FUTURA Laboratories.
What do you got, the blue general release?
Yeah, and of course the Virgils and the Crocs.
Verge off-whites. Yep.
Yeah, and so explain to us why this part of your life is so important to you.
Well, I mean, you know, once we, like I said, that detour into the streetwear game and let's make T-shirts, hey, what's this computer, and, you know, what's Adobe? And the whole learning curve of graphics on computing and what that would become was something I was definitely on the ground floor of, and I was all about that. I was all about tech and, you know, devices and learning new stuff. But what you were talking about, you know, the getting up part. In these commercial ventures, whether it's Nike, Marc Jacobs, you know, some recent things I may have done, the kicker for me, and the Nike shoe I did this year really embodies that getting up spirit, because that's essentially kids are walking around with my painting on their feet, with my tag just like on the lateral whatever, and I mean, it's just beyond anything me and Mark Edmonds, AKA Ali, would have come up with as a 15 and 14-year-old kid back when we jumped into this whole thing about, hey, I want to get my name out there. I want to, so we're way beyond that. And for me, that's the real thrill. Seeing a big-ass box with like 12 boxes inside of a bigger box with like FUTURA, like stamped on the thing. It's like, that's for me the real payday, actually. You know what I mean? I get more reward out of like the packaging than the money because I'm going to spend the money. It's got to go to expenses. I got to have a smoke. There's like shit I got to pay for. But that's also like, I don't have like mad aspirations of shit I need. I'm very, like, not for nothing, like, I don't know about you guys, but, I came from very low economic strata. When I sold the painting in on the heels of graffiti art success, I sold the painting. I told you guys that piece of wood, which you couldn't sell at the time. It took me less than an hour, no doubt, to paint that, but I did a painting after that in a half an hour that I sold for $250, and I was like, wow, this is really making money, right? And like, I just couldn't understand my dad. It would have taken my dad like, come on, everything was in comparison to how my father struggled, which is why, I simply can't complain about how things have turned out. But yeah, I do get a rush out of seeing the tag still running on stuff. That's like what it's all about, really.
What's interesting, I had a wonderful moment earlier in the gallery. The gentleman bought one of your point men. He was so proud and happy that he was able to have it. And he had to pull it out and show it to me, and I was really excited. Yeah, and again, there's an accessibility, right? I think part of what we recognize is that we are still attached to a community that we cultivate, keep cultivating, and it's very interesting about this community because it's now and forever, and younger people will continually support and engage and participate, but they're looking at you guys, the elder statesmen. How do I get a piece of this? How can I get a signature? Will you sign my book still, right? And so collaborating with brands is, both high and low are ways to do that. And DAZE, I don't have a picture, but we talked about this going into high fashion with Enrico Coverti. And again, from the streets to the runways of Milan.
I'm sorry we don't have an image of the collection that I designed, a spring-summer collection in 2019 for Enrico Coverti. But that collaboration came about in a really organic way. Enrico Coverti has a huge, very beautiful exhibition space in Florence where I was doing this exhibition and kind of putting it all together. And they looked at the show. They didn't really look at it, oh, well, this is a solo show. They kept referring to it as, this is your collection of works. So I started to think, okay, well, you guys have this house. I would love to put together a collection for you. And the exhibition was happening in the beginning of June, and there's an important, there's like the Italian version of, say, Fashion Week in Paris. In Italy, it's called the Pitti Uomo. And my exhibition was happening there. So they decided to sort of create this collection around some of the works that I had done. And the collection included, most of it was women's wear, some of it was menswear too, but it included maybe 4 or 5 dresses, 3 bathing suits, shoes, men's suits, men's shirts. Yeah, it was really great to kind of see my designs on a runway for a change instead of a layup.
So keeping it real, my friends, graffiti writing is from the streets, but it's street art, right? This has been the most contentious conversation that happens in our space, and again with the public, right? And we have your gated painting here. which is on the street. Just, you know, so now is that, if I were to call you a street artist, are you comfortable with that?
No, not really. I'm more like an artist from the underground that came above ground a long time ago. I'm not really a street artist. This particular piece was interesting because this goes back to fashion moda once again, and Crash, myself, and Freedom kind of took it upon ourselves to do these store gates on properties that weren't being used. They were kind of abandoned. And at that time, they were having the South Bronx Art Show, and instead of having paintings in the gallery setting, we had like a map that pinpointed these gates that we had painted on going up Brook Avenue. And the community loved it. They really loved it. It was an uncommissioned work. I think we did like 4 or 5 gates going up Brook Avenue. 6. And the community really loved it. It was amazing. And just using this abandoned facade of a business to kind of, you know, make the community a little bit better visually, you know. So
this is interesting for me because when folks talk to me about street art and they're pointing out these murals, I quickly correct them and say, no, this isn't the tradition of muralists. That goes way back. And that is a way more dignified to call these guys and respectful to say they're a muralist as opposed to being street artists. That said, John, you did the Bowery Wall, which is fantastic. It's a fantastic venue for any artist, actually. It's such a high-profile wall. You've done it, and it's, you know, often reserved for street artists. Now, if you could, I guess, express to us where this falls into, right? In between your studio practice and public art, graffiti art. Is this street art?
It's a painting.
Fair enough.
It's a mural.
Fair enough.
I sort of shrug off titles because it doesn't make sense. You know, you put a title on something that you don't understand.
Yeah.
Basically, so. But this is a mural. I mean, the story behind this was I had 2 weeks. We had done a mural to celebrate Martha Cooper's birthday prior to this. So that Monday, after we did the mural, that Monday I got a phone call. Do you want to do the mural, the wall? I said, sure. When? They go, 2 weeks. I'm like, 2 weeks. So I had to come up with an idea to do this. I'm like, okay, I don't know. So then I wanted to do Crazy Cat and Ignat. So the mouse is on one side, throwing a brick, hitting the cat on the other side. But then I realized someone's going to say that it's a violent, idea. A mouse hitting a cat or whatever the connotation is. And I don't know. So then I realized, how about Popeye? Because everybody knows who Popeye is. You ask someone's grandmother, or I know a little kid, everyone knows. So I figured, all right, I'll do that. And 3 days later, it was up.
So the organizers or the developers who run this wall, the Goldman Global Arts Company out of Wynwood Walls, they hold and reserve this space and invite artists from all over the world to paint it. But also, well, let me just flash forward a little bit to Lenny's painting at Wynwood Walls.
By the way, I'm sorry. By the way, the Popeye wall, I was the first New Yorker to paint it.
Yeah. Isn't
at the time, because everybody that was born in, they were not from New York to do it. So I didn't know that at the time. I'm like, really? Oh, okay.
So here we are in Wynwood, kind of the mecca of street art and graffiti. This is where ideas clash, personalities clash, or blend, so to speak. Lenny, you painted this epic mural that still exists And I'm happy to say, when I was there just a couple days ago, how many people, as soon as they walk in, they stand there to take a picture in front of your painting.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. Yeah, it was very hot when I did that. But this is my second time painting at Wynwood. I was there a dozen years ago, I guess, when Tony was still with us, and Tony Goldman. But the first iteration was the kind of breaking the ice of that whole location, and I got to do a wall then. It ran for about 10 years, and they asked me, did I want to renovate the old wall or do something new? And I just said, let's do something new. And there's something wonderful about that also, because the buffing of the old wall was not like empowering, but a little bit empowering in the sense that, like, I don't really give it any value other than the fact that, it's sentimental at that point, but people were crushed at its being buffed. But just like this wall here in the museum, at some point my idea is like, months from now when the next show comes through, bust out the white paint and just crush it, because that's kind of the nature of work in a public space, if you will. This is a bit more controlled and organized, so it may not get buffed or even gone over. But that's one of the sad legacies of the wall on Houston Street, is that they do bring an artist to paint and have a 2-3 month run, and they bring artists in annually or over the annual. But inevitably, they're all destroyed within 48 hours by local people who disrespect this whole idea of bringing in an individual, a team, whoever, from wherever. And so it's a bit sad when an artist comes to work a week on a wall, and as soon as they leave town, and, I guess for the digital, longevity or whatever, you got your image, you're good, but the wall has been destroyed, and people walking by the next week, and it just looks horrible. So I wish, there could be some happy balance there, but I think I fully understand why they're going over it as well, so it's a bit of a paradox.
Yeah, it is, and again, the lines blur sometimes because graffiti artists are very skilled painters and muralists, and sometimes they participate with large public murals, and like these guys do. And so, but in general, New York being New York, these kids, this generation, I think what street art has been sort of branded or connotes, perhaps, right, is a certain type of privilege and personality, and that the kids from the streets, they're rambunctious. Again, not you know what? In some ways, not familiar to what happened on the subways to some degree. So, some final thoughts, folks. For me, it's a great honor and privilege as I sit with you guys in our history and our story, which, is very rich, enriched my life, and has also enriched a lot of other people and impacted a lot of people. And as I look out into the audience, my dear friends, Marty and Henry, John, folks that I've grown up with as well, and folks who have advocated for us, right? Who? Marty and Henry? Yes, can you raise your hand, Marty and Henry, please? In that, the transformation we've had as young men and maturing artists, right? They sort of not just went to the train yards to paint with us, but they help educate us, and also take pictures to cement and to add testimonial to the magnificent work and the important work that is no longer available to us, right? And so, as we all travel the world and see the impact of this, right, and we could have never imagined it, and now we can imagine it, and now, in fact, we imagine even more. What is that more, right? What is it that you guys would love to see in the next phase of your development?
You mean like what projects I would like to see realized, or?
Both projects, even, legacy.
Well, I mean, in terms of project-based work, I see myself getting more involved with sculpture because I like the idea that people could walk around a piece and not just see it sort of on a picture plane, but I think there's more engagement in being able to kind of walk around that. But, just getting back for a second to the work that I do with students, I think I'd also like to do even more of that, I think that, teaching kids or showing kids what they maybe should do and what they shouldn't do is really important, I think that it's really, but at the same time, I never looked at working with students as, hey, these are my assistants. It's not like that. It's all about helping them to realize their own dreams. It's all about helping them to find their own voice, and that's it. Otherwise, there's really no point. I mean, I could hire somebody to fill in something green for me. That's really nothing, But if I can, help somebody to realize something that they would like to see in a public space, I think that's important. Yeah, I'm not like, I look at myself as a door that they can walk through and gain experience.
Thank you.
I don't know. I think what I would like to see, hopefully, is the ideals that Fashion Moda and Waltworks projects, which is anything is possible. You can't paint wrong. You can't write a wrong song. You know what I'm saying? It's what you express, and it's okay to fail. We give you permission to fail with the gallery. It's okay, but it's a place. It's a haven for someone who has something to say, and you can say it. So I would like to see that expand. I don't know how, but hopefully this next move will open that door. We want to just continue, to open up for anyone.
Lenny?
I want life. I want more life. Yeah, that's my summation of everything. I want to live. I want to live to be as old as my good friends Henry and Martha, and I want to be a 70-something-year-old. I want to be an 80-something-year-old and be as bright as those individuals. That's my inspiration right now. It's yeah, I mean, I'm moving on in numbers, but I feel like I'm going the wrong way in my head. And I'm only feeling more rejuvenated, obviously, by the moment in which I'm living and the energy in which I'm surrounded by. So, like I said, I'm not religious, so please pray for me that I will live to be 100. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So at this point, I gather we'll take a quick Q&A. There is a microphone set up in the center aisle, or will be set up in the center aisle. So we'll take a couple questions. Oh, by the way, staff, forgive me if I did not pay attention to time. So if there are any questions, please feel free.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Elijah. First, Crash, I did a mural at a school that I used to work at, and it's still there at PS34. Really awesome to watch you guys do that, and I appreciate that you allowed a lot of my kids to get involved. So, very grateful. I got a question for FUTURA. So, the name is obviously FUTURA. Like Mayor said, like it's all about the future and stuff. There's a lot of new things happening in graffiti with drones and with, people putting cement on brick walls so that they look like they pop off the wall. Is there would you have any guess or where do you think graffiti is going to be with this advancement of technology? Have you ever thought about the future of graffiti now, right? Because you were ahead of your time then. What do you think is going to happen in 20 years from now?
Yeah, God bless you. Yeah, just like you said, obviously drones are something I'm seeing. A machine that can be programmed to paint, if you will. But as you're saying, I would think like lights, holograms. I mean, even if you imagine what we're seeing with hundreds or thousands of drones that are able to operate, not a drone that's painting a wall, but I think it's going to become more a visual experience, a little more flashy and less, some of the old kind of ways of just looking at something painted on a wall will have its day. I don't know where, but I see some tech taking over, probably. I mean, we've all seen now this application of, I've seen it for a few years now, like you can kind of paint with light and, there's some projection thing going on where you're tagging up, but there's no spray paint, but it looks like you're painting. It's kind of corny, but it is, but they'll figure it out.
But you also experiment with VR and 3D printing and things like that.
Yeah, 3D printing is another, language kind of thingy, but as far as physical graffiti, I think it'll always remain very, graffiti in the future, if you will. Where's it headed? Well, it's in retrograde because it's always going to be the kind of, scribble scrabble that is the genesis of all of it, right? It's always going to revert to that. Tags on top of one another, cross-outs. But tags will never disappear. People's desire to communicate their own identities or relate a political or some sort of controversial messaging, that's always going to happen.
Thank you.
Elijah, my guy, thank you.
Good evening. I'm known. Most of you guys up there and a lot of my elders in the audience. John's up in here too? Yes, you all are my heroes, childhood heroes. I remember I put that in front of Phase 2. Tomorrow will be his birthday. And also Phase 2 Memorial. So my question to you, John. From my heart, in the next 200-300 years, when the textbooks are written for the children, what would you like for the narrative to be in those textbooks? If you can kindly, in your heart and soul, express that to me and the audience, I'm greatly appreciative. God bless you. I love you all.
So, I shouldn't be the only one answering this question, so I'm going to pass the mic, but I just want to say very quickly that yesterday I received a copy of Phase 2's book, Kill the G Word, about his years that were spent in Italy. And it's a very extensive novel very extensive textbook about all the work that he created during the time that he lived in Italy and how his influence was on countless people in Italy. It was amazing. And looking through that book, it really inspired me yet again. You know, I was good friends with him. He inspired me years ago, but looking at this book and going through all the drawings that were reprinted in the book was just really an incredible experience. So, I mean, I would like to see more of that, where people are allowed to be inspired by his work and the work of others.
Inspired from the grave, right? I mean, that's kind of deep as well. But what you speak of, his book will be there in 200 years. It might be like under glass and you got to handle it with gloves, but it'll be there. His first book, Theory of the Underground, starting Rowley from the Underground. I mean, all these publications, they'll be archived in history, right? And whether it's Faith of Graffiti, you know, Subway Art, Spray Can, you know, all of these publications. I mean, Ram just dropped a book, Lee dropped a book, Zeph dropped a book. A lot of people dropped books this year, not for nothing. So 2024 winds up being a very important year also. You know, I mean, we have a lot of 50-year celebrations going on with whether it's hip-hop, someone's arrival, but Faze will never be forgotten. Nor will Case 2, nor will Don Dini, you know, Stay High, you know, Tracy. I mean, we could name all of our fallen angels, and they'll only probably be bigged up even more over such a timeline, because we'll all, you know, our descendants won't even be here, and you were saying like a couple hundred years. You know, I'm a visionary, I can't see that far. But I do feel everything will be in a more clinical setting, a la THX 1138 or some kind of future dystopian thing. Everything will be white with like gloves and shit.
And we're going to call it quits. This wonderful young lady right behind you, sir. Thanks for wrapping it up for us.
Hello everyone, my name is Ben. I just wanted to really thank you guys for putting this on. You know, I think one of the things I love about graffiti is the intergenerational connections it builds across time. And you know, I think about the quote from Star Wars, you know, Henry Chalfant's movie, which I implore everyone to see if you haven't. I think it's something along the lines of graffiti writing in New York is a vocation. Its traditions are passed down from one youthful generation to the next, and it really speaks to the importance of mentorship, you know, in this craft. And one of my mentors told me about the importance that the subways had for this subculture, and one thing he said always stuck in my head: graffiti is meant to move, you know, and without that movement, what is graffiti? So just thinking about the depth of graffiti on the trains, I think around 88, 89, did the depth of graffiti on the trains have any impact on your individual aesthetic when it comes to style writing, as well as your development as like an artist?
Loaded question. Well, most of us already had finished doing the subways, so I don't think it affected us style-wise. But what it did was it created a void for those that were young enough to see the stuff in the late 80s and wanted to participate in the 90s. But you know what? In saying that you know that it's gone, it's also pushed it out to where you have all these massive murals now happening, and everything that is occurring is because the MTA did that. So, you know, the rebound is, again, we're here, talking about it 50 years later. So it's, you know, I thank the MTA for that. But again, you know, the sad part is the generations that missed out on it. I mean, there's a lot of young cats, you know, who say, oh, I wish I was born at that period. You know, so I get it. Yeah, but you know, I've said it before. Graph is about movement. You know, it's the only thing that I know of that you can read as it ran. You can read the words. You can read the letters. you could see what was happening as it rode. Nothing like that ever happened, and will.
My name is Giovanni. I'm an independent curator and artist. And when I think about graffiti and I think about public art, one of the most recent headlines was the 191st Street station and how that was covered over. And then ironically, how later on the Cultural Commission started commissioning local artists to apply for spaces so that they would be able to showcase their art. That makes me think about how artist autonomy is starting to be challenged. So as OGs and the originators of how street art and public art is shown and preserved, what advice would you give to the next generation on how they can retain their autonomy?
You want? Yeah.
Well, I think it's better to ask for forgiveness and permission.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that was our era, right? And that doesn't maybe fly right now because the smart play might be young artists looking for public space to front their creativity in some fashion is look for allies within the structure of the community, local politicians, people who are actually part of the infrastructure hits and like what all is happening with development like that. And also outreach for funding. One of the things we were ignorant about, not everyone, but maybe we were, is that there's a lot of money on the table for projects, for people to do creative things. I know they're constantly trying to diminish that. You were talking about your group, right, with the schools and what's happening, but there's programs there. I mean, if you watch any of those PBS shows, you see like crazy names at the end of those shows with all those, photo all those names, get those names, and like send letters to, you know what I mean? There's like a lot of ways to get loot. And if you're not just following what everyone else is doing, like tagging people on IG or something really whack like that, send letters to folks and express yourself and go, meet people. But I think there's a lot of opportunity right now for young people. Was that tunnel you're talking about? The one,
yeah.
that crazy ass
Yep.
one, right?
Yep.
We had tags running in there. 1981, 82. Yeah. Well, anyway, sorry. Melos?
I think there's never been a more exciting time to be a young artist. And only because one of the things that has happened as a result of all this, that it democratized the art making in a radical way. But also that the culture itself is somewhat elusive, self-contained, but also has taken the cues to organize itself for itself, meaning creating gallery spaces, creating events around the world, even creating the tools that they need. And one of the things I often repeat as we think about the future, about art making in general, about making art with the tools of your time. And here we are at the precipice of one of the most incredible and confusing time about making art through AI. But also we're in this unusual, unique place where we're seeing spray painting drones, right? So technology will play a role in that, and it'll be subversive at times as well. Katsu is infamous for that. And so young people will, I think, always strive for autonomy, but they won't get it in the way we got it. It's impossible, right? Not impossible, but very difficult. But I think, like Lenny points out, there has to be a concerted effort to work with community and resources that are available to you. So with that, folks, we're going to wrap this up. I thank you all. Thank you, Crash. Thank you, Futura. Thank you, DAZE. Thank you, Bronx Museum.
Thank you, MARE, DAZE, FUTURA, and Crash for this engaging conversation, and thank you all for coming tonight.